Have you ever known that an innocent handshake could bleed you out of everything you ever had? That actually happened to India. One so-called fair agreement in 1765 cost the nation $45 trillion, the livelihoods of millions and generations of stolen futures. This is the story of the greatest heist in human history. Step into the year 1700. You are standing in the richest country on earth, India. It controls 27% of global GDP, while the rest of the world begs for a seat. And honestly, you didn't just stumble into this wealth by accident, nor is it your rich geography and abundance of natural resources that played all the tricks. If you look around, you'll see three industries running tirelessly, and each one is making the next one richer. The first is a textile monopoly. It literally strangles every other market. Your weavers in Bengal produce cotton so fine that Europeans call it woven air. One single bolt of this fabric costs more than a British soldier earns in a year. Because your textile routes already reach Arabia and China, your jewelers and potters piggyback on the same roads. One dominant industry carries every other craft on its back across the entire planet. The second is an impeccable naval fleet. It makes European armadas look like toys. Bengal alone runs 5,000 merchant ships. Each moves 500 tons of high-value cargo. British guys on the ground see it for themselves. Your teak hulls last 20 years, while English oak ships rot in 12. Your ports at Surat and Masulipatam are not mere docking harbors. They are the world's toll booths that trade your finished goods for every ounce of Europe's silver. The third one is the production of the world's most lethal military hardware. Since the 6th century, your blacksmiths have turned raw iron into woot steel, the highest grade metal on the planet. Arab and European commanders call it Damascus steel. They buy it to make swords that they show off as a supreme status symbol. You don't import finished goods because you are the apex provider of finished goods. Now watch how the money moves through this triple threat economy. Europe buys your cloth, your steel, and your spice with mountains of silver. Every sale pulls gold and silver away from Europe and straight into your treasury. Aurangzeb pulls in over 100 million pounds a year, while the Sun King of France collects less than 1/10. You're not in the same league as Europe because Europe is looking up at you. Then 1707 arrives. The central nervous system of the empire suddenly dies. Aurangzeb passes away, and a line of weak successors begins to tear the throne apart. Regional warlords stop sending money to the capital and start taking over their own territories. Your industries are still running, your artisans are still working at their looms, but the political roof just fell in over the richest factory in human history. In 1739, Nader Shah rode out of Persia, smashed your army in 3 hours, and walked straight into Delhi. He hangs out for 57 days and leaves with the peacock throne, the Koh-i-Noor diamond, and 87 million pounds in gold. That loot proves an open vault with no door is no longer wealth. It's a global invitation, and across the ocean, a group of London merchants just received the message. Those merchants don't wear crowns or command massive armies. Not yet, anyway. They run a company called the East India Company. It started back in 1600 as a basic trading gig. You see them moving spices, textiles, and simple contracts for modest profits. But by the early 1700s, that boring brick building in London turned into a financial weapon. And that suddenly changes the game. Kings usually raise armies by taxing peasants. The company raises cash by selling shares to hungry investors. They insure every ship through Lloyd's and borrow at scale without asking a monarch. One bad season won't kill them because the losses get absorbed by the market. Capital just keeps getting replaced, so the company just keeps growing. Now that the door to India is wide open, they don't want to wait any longer. They don't launch a loud invasion, though. That is too expensive and way too risky. So they play a trick. They set up warehouses in Surat, Madras, and Calcutta. They butter up local rulers with gifts and trade deals that feel like a win. They blend into the system instead of attacking it head-on. But behind every polite handshake, they are closely mapping the weak spots. Every local rivalry is a lever they can pull. Every debt a local ruler owes is a handle they can grip. And that's the secret move that every empire eventually learns. When the center breaks, you don't need a war to take control. You can just buy it. The company has something no Indian ruler has right now. They have unlimited London cash and zero intention of going home. The richest country on earth just lost the key to the vault. The most high-tech money machine in history just walked through the door with a mere contract. Like the story so far. Don't miss out on hitting that subscribe button. Move to 1757. The company is done watching by now. It has mapped every fault line, every rivalry, every debt. Now it is ready to act. The target is Bengal, not by accident. It's the crown jewel of the entire subcontinent. It produces 40% of all exports. Its textile industry alone dresses 3 continents. Its capital, Murshidabad, is so wealthy that its banker, a single private merchant named Jagat Seth, controls more capital than the Bank of England. The only obstacle standing between the company and Bengal is Nawab Siraj-ud-Dowlah, the ruler of Bengal. He is 23, newly crowned, and surrounded by men with a price tag on their loyalty, so the company barely needs to defeat him on a battlefield. It just needs to find those men, and it finds one almost immediately, Mir Jafar. He's the top commander of Nawab's army, and he hates that he was passed over for power when Siraj took the throne. The company approaches him. A secret meeting happens in the shadows. The deal is lucrative, or at least it looks so. Deliver Bengal, and the company delivers the throne. The company also pulls in Jagat Seth, and it bribes Rai Durlab, another senior military commander. It also flips Yar Latif Khan, a key court official. By June 23, 1757, your ruler is surrounded by men who've already sold him out. The Battle of Plassey starts in a rain-soaked mango grove. Your army appears to be stronger. The Nawab commands 50,000 soldiers, 40 cannons, and a French artillery unit. The company, on the other side, fields just 3,000 troops. It's fewer than 1 in 16 of your force. By every military calculation, this should not even be a contest. But Mir Jafar doesn't move at all. He stands your 35,000 soldiers completely still and watches. The battle falls apart in hours. Siraj flees on a camel. He is captured days later on the banks of the Ganges River. And on July 2nd, 1757, Mir Jafar's own son has him executed in a palace corridor. Mir Jafar takes the throne, just like the deal promised. But if you look at the math, you will see. The company didn't win a war. They purchased an evil outcome. The whole operation cost the company £60,000 in bribes. In return, Mir Jafar hands over £2.5 million in cash and land worth millions more. Every company officer pockets a cut. Their leader, Robert Clive, walks away with £234,000, about £28 million today, for one afternoon's work. And now the company does something far more dangerous than looting. They step inside your system. Your throne remains. Your courts remain. Mir Jafar is your new ruler, but only on paper. The real power sits in the company's counting houses, and it wants that power made legal. So it looks upward. Above your Nawabs, above your regional rulers, one symbolic authority still exists, the Mughal emperor in Delhi. Shah Alam II is the ruler. He's militarily broken, financially gutted, and desperate for any alliance that keeps him breathing. The company hits the emperor with a cold deal. Sign over the tax rights for Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa. In return, the company cut him a yearly check for 2.6 million rupees. A broken king trades his legal soul for survival money. On August 12, 1765, at a ceremony in Allahabad, Shah Alam II signs the Diwani rights over to the East India Company. In a single paper, the company gets the legal power to grab every tax, every cent of land revenue, and every bit of grain from 40 million people. Little did you know that move would soon turn into a disaster. The company doesn't put a cent of that tax money back into the land. It uses the people's own tax money to buy the people's own goods. Then it sells those same goods back to them at a higher price. Local wealth is now the tool for its own robbery. Before 1765, the company had to be good at business to make money. It had to compete, haggle, and provide value to survive. After 1765, the company doesn't need to produce. It doesn't need to earn. It just collects. And that act of collection won't stop anytime soon. Watch what changes after 1765. The company is done playing nice. They aren't negotiating or mapping anymore. They have the legal right to your land, your work, and your food. And they plan to use all three. Under the Mughals, your tax was about 15% to 20%. It was tough, but you could survive. You paid after the harvest. You paid in grain. If the weather was bad, the tax adjusted. The company breaks every one of those rules at once. First, they fix a hard number for the tax. They don't care about rain. They don't care about drought. They don't care if your crops grew or died. That number must be hit every single year. Then they build a chain to squeeze you. At the top are the company bosses in Calcutta answering to investors in London. Below them are the zamindars, their local landlords hired to collect the cash. Below them are the officers and the village heads. Every person in this chain has one job: deliver more money than last year or get fired. The pressure doesn't stay at the top. It flows down like water, hitting every crack until it reaches you. Now, look at the view from the village. You don't pay after the harvest anymore. You pay before it, and you don't pay in grain, you pay in hard cash. This means before your crops even grow, you are forced to sell them early and cheap just to get the currency. You have no choice and no time to haggle. Farmers are beaten in the village square. Their pots and pans are stolen. Their children are taken as leverage. If you can't find the cash, the company seizes your land and auctions it off to the highest bidder. In one generation, the land your family owned for centuries vanishes because of one bad monsoon. You move down the ladder. You go from a landowner to a laborer, from an owner to a tenant on your own soil. The system doesn't care. The company is under its own pressure. Shareholders in London want their dividends every quarter. If the revenue drops, the stock price drops. Angry investors scream at the directors, who send orders to Calcutta to squeeze you even harder. The extraction never slows down. The targets go up even when the land is dying. Here is where the engine turns deadly. As farmers lose their land, they become desperate laborers. Too many people fighting for too little work drives wages to zero. The economy that once fed the world's best textiles starts to fall apart. Your weavers and blacksmiths are pushed off their trades and back onto the overcrowded land. The company now decides what you produce, who owns the tools, and who sets the price for everything. You can't call it a tax system anymore. It's turned into an engine that moves wealth from your village, through the chain, across the ocean, and into London bank accounts. Once that engine hits full acceleration, nothing can stop it. The pressure is about to hit the harvest itself. It does not stay in the villages. It travels down every trade route, into every workshop, through every loom, and into every furnace that once made you the wealthiest manufacturer on earth. For centuries, your weavers in Bengal and Gujarat owned 25% of the global cloth trade. That was your income, your identity, and your power. Now watch the company move in for the kill. They start by strangling the competition. The company makes itself the only legal buyer. They set the price, and you take it. If you don't, you face the consequences. The rate they pay is always below what your labor is actually worth. Then, they lock the weavers in a cage of debt. The company pays a tiny sum up front just to create a legal bond. That debt chains the weaver to the company rules. If a weaver refuses to deliver, the punishment is beatings, prison, and public shame. While you're trapped at home, they kill your exports. In Britain, your textiles hit a wall of 80% taxes to protect British factories that can't match your quality. Your cloth is too good and too cheap, so they pass laws to make it too expensive to buy. The global markets your ancestors built for centuries are now legally sealed shut. And as your doors close, British factory goods flood through yours. The Industrial Revolution is screaming ahead in Manchester. Steam looms produce fabric for a fraction of your cost. These machine-made goods enter your market with almost zero tax. Your weaver, already crushed by company contracts, now watches cheap British cloth sell in the same bazaar where his family sold premium fabric for generations. He cannot sell abroad. He cannot compete at home. He cannot even walk away. He keeps working at prices that don't cover his food until he simply snaps. Entire weaving towns collapse in one generation. Dhaka, the world capital of muslin, loses 90% of its weavers by the mid-1800s. By 1840, the city is a ghost. The company doesn't leave that hole empty. They fill it on purpose. Your farmers are pushed to grow cash crops, indigo, opium, and raw cotton. These feed British industry. Indigo dyes their clothes. Opium pays for their trade with China. Raw cotton supplies the Manchester factories that just destroyed your weavers. It's a full flip. In 1750, India produced 25% of the world's manufactured goods. By 1900, that number crashes to less than 2%. At the same time, Britain's share jumps from under 2% to nearly 23%. It is a direct transfer of wealth. Your ports, once full of finished goods sailing out, now only load raw materials onto British ships. Those same ships return with finished British products to sell back to you. You are no longer a manufacturer. You are a raw material supplier and a trapped customer at the same time. The most advanced industrial economy on Earth has been reduced to a farm. And the farmers are about to find out that even the land isn't theirs to control. Look at what your economy has become. Your industries are gone. Your people have flooded onto the land. You have too many workers, too little soil, and a tax system still running at full pressure. And your agriculture depends on the monsoon. When the rain works, you survive. When it fails, everything breaks at once. It fails in 1769. The rains weaken across Bengal. Rice production collapses. In any normal system, this is when taxes drop and grain is moved to the hungry. The company does the exact opposite. Revenue targets stay fixed. The collection keeps moving. The local bosses push harder because their jobs depend on delivering the cash. Grain that should be feeding your villages gets sold just to meet tax demands. It gets loaded onto company ships and exported. The food exists, but you already paid the tax. You already sold the crop. You have zero money left to buy it back. By 1770, Bengal collapses into a nightmare. Between 7 and 10 million people die. That is 1/3 of the entire population. Entire districts empty out. Fields are abandoned. Production stops completely. But the extraction does not stop. They kept collecting taxes through the peak of the famine. Exports continue because contracts must be honored. On the ground, people sell their tools, their land, and their clothes. Then they sell their children. Then they eat grass, leaves, dead animals. When that runs out, they feed on the dead bodies. Corpses line the roads, villages go silent, nobody is left alive to make a sound, and still the ledgers stay open. Still, the ships sail. This is not a mistake, this is not just being lazy. This is a system built so perfectly for taking wealth that it keeps working even while millions die around it. But where is all this wealth actually going? You'd expect a famine that kills 10 million people to slow things down. It doesn't. The company learns that even mass death won't break tax collection, so instead of pulling back, they lock the system in place forever with the permanent settlement. Local bosses are declared permanent landlords. Their tax bill to the company is fixed for life. If they miss one payment, their land is seized and auctioned. To survive, they crush you for every cent. By now, the company runs your courts, your police, and your life. Then, in 1857, the soldiers mutiny, princes rise, farmers join in. For a moment, the whole system shakes, but it doesn't break. The revolt is crushed, and the company is replaced by the British Crown. Now, the extraction has the full military backing of the world's most powerful empire. Now, British officials run the country, but you pay their salaries in pounds. You pay their pensions. The money is sent to Britain and never returns. Then there's the Imperial Army, a massive force on your soil paid for entirely by your taxes. Even British wars in Afghanistan, Burma, and Africa are billed directly to you. Then comes the infrastructure. Railways spread across the map, but they aren't built for you. They connect the farms to the ports so raw materials can hit British ships faster. British investors fund these tracks with a guaranteed 5% profit. If the trains don't make enough money, your taxes fill the gap. India takes the risk, London takes the profit. By 1914, World War I pulls in 1.3 million of your soldiers. But beyond the lives, India pays for the entire war supplies, transport, and weapons. The drain hits a scale never seen before, and 1939 explodes that scale. Britain buys your supplies throughout World War II, but they don't pay in real cash. They issue promises on a ledger. By 1945, Britain owes India over £1.3 billion, but the money is locked and controlled by London. Now, your share of world manufacturing is below 2%. Your people are the poorest on Earth, and you're still counting how much they took. The scale of the drain is still debated, but modern economists put a number on it. $44.6 trillion. That is 17 times the entire GDP of the United Kingdom today. After all this history, what do you think? Was the Great British Industrial Revolution a triumph of genius? Or was it just a 200-year liquidation sale of your entire civilization? Drop your views in the comments, subscribe, and stay tuned. See you soon in the next video. History does not just repeat, it rhymes. So make sure you're listening for the next Money Echoes. Subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.